Welcome, everybody, to Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker back at you with another interactive class out of the secret library of the Connected Universe. Well, getting back into full swing here in the new year. Last week we covered, I guess it was the week before last because we were traveling last week. We covered parallel universes and the simulation. So kind of piggybacking off of course, our Stargate tour from back in November. It seems, my gosh, it's just a couple months ago, but it almost seems like a distant memory, but in some ways seems like just yesterday. It's wild. We have more from that coming up this evening as we get into the interdimensional universe and consciousness. So what in the world did the ancient Egyptians have to tell us about other dimensions? What did they think about consciousness? What do we know? Of course, some aspects of science have talked about consciousness. We've talked about that many times here. And we usually think about our consciousness, but what about the consciousness of beings that are living in these other dimensions? So we're going to get into a lot of those types of things this evening. So I do want to invite all those that are listening to the podcast version of this later. Please join us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, connecteduniverseportal.com. Of course, for those who are actually members of the Connected Universe Portal, you will get access to the after show and so much more, because through the portal and, of course, the Patreon, you get not only the after show, you get the sneak peek and behind the scenes video. Just posted a really good one here the other day, which was a little behind the scenes of the film I'm working on right now. Some interview snippets with Trevor Grousey you did get to see a bit of a sneak peek of that during the Stargates recap back in December and what we are doing out there. So you get access to that. Of course, you get all of the Egypt material, as well as other places that we tour and explore, the UK, Ireland. We're going to be doing Turkey coming up here in September, Germany as well. We've got material from the American Southwest, all kinds of stuff back there. So definitely come check that out. Insider travel vlogs, exclusive articles, monthly Q&As, Mike's Morning Mug video, all that wonderful stuff. ConnectedUniversePortal.com. I also want to let you know that I have activated memberships out here during the public portion of our live stream on the YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel, which is Mike Ricksecker YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/@mricksecker. You can, with that membership, it has some of the perks that you get as like a Patreon member or Connected Universe Portal member. So the after show bits will be there for people who sign up for the membership. I've also thrown a Mike's Morning Mug out there. So the memberships on YouTube work a little bit differently, and I'll try to align that properly with the other platforms like Patreon and the portal and all of that. So good to see some of you are already joining us. We got Tom McNicholas down there, always. Jose Sanchez, great to see you. And then Brandon Wallace, great to see you as well, among others who have already joined us. So, all right, let's start getting into this thing. Last week, we discussed the parallel universes. Like I was saying, this week we're going to discuss interdimensional nature of this one. Yeah, we may get into a little bit of other universes as well. And what I wanted to start this off with was a clip from last year's Conscious Life Expo, which is out in Los Angeles every year in February. This year it's, what is that, the 19th to the 21st? No, the 20th to the 22nd. Yeah, because 19th is Kate's birthday. So we're doing a little bit of a Hollywood tour, and then we got the Conscious Life Expo following that. So I'll be speaking about the interdimensional universe there. And I do have a link down in the description for attending Conscious Life Expo, and also voting for my book for the book awards. But this snippet here was from a panel I was on last year talking about ancient civilizations. And while a lot of this clip has to do with unearthing things in Antarctica, it's really kind of toward the end of this clip where we start getting into more of the interdimensional nature of our universe. So I wanted to kind of ease into it a little bit before we get too heavy in all of this. So here we go.
How are they communicating that? We'll get to that in a moment. But to answer your question, I think that's one of the reasons why, go back to Antarctica here, why people are looking down at Antarctica. Very mysterious. Again, access is very limited. What is hidden under that ice? If, like Linda had mentioned earlier, that everything connected. By the way, Linda, I love that you said connected universe, because my new book series is Connecting the Universe. So
it's the most important concept for humans to get now and get it right.
It's the next stage of evolution. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely agree with that. With everything having previously been connected, is that technology that was used to move these blocks, is there a hidden pyramid under the ice there? And that technology with it to move your Pillsbury biscuits, is that technology hidden under the ice there? Is that what we are truly down there in Antarctica to find? Very well could be. As far as communication, so my latest Connecting the Universe book, portals to the stars, stargates, portals, ancient Egypt, all that. Yeah, I talk a lot about stargates in there, but I think we always think of a stargate as we're going from here to somewhere else in the cosmos, like the movies and the films and the television shows and all that. And yeah, very well could be. But I think something that we forget about is the global consciousness, and yes, how we are all connected. So these Stargate chambers that we find in Egypt, and they're labeled very in plain sight, Stargates. Instead of the idea of going somewhere else to the cosmos, was this a way to go into this chamber and be able to communicate in a way with perhaps not even realizing that we are communicating with somewhere else on the earth, but sharing the ideas, connecting with consciousness across the earth, maybe even like Linda was saying, splitting in two and having these conversations with other beings across the globe to share these ideas, and that's why everything looks similar.
Yeah, and not just sharing these ideas and concepts and having communication with beings from across the globe, which absolutely you could, but also through other dimensions, to other points in time, perhaps even outside the universe. Last week we talked a bit about from the aspect of if we are within a simulation, what does that look like from the outside, from outside the universe? When we talk about all these different dimensions that we have, the simulation would be running outside of that, encapsulating all those dimensions within our universe. But from within, we could be able to communicate to all of those dimensions. And since we are connected to, if you want to use the term source, we should be able to communicate with that as well. As with any simulation, at least when you look at it from the idea of a computer simulation, you have access to help, right? You can submit a help ticket. So is that what that is? So you have these different layers that you can communicate with and interact with. Great to see a bunch of familiar faces down there in the chat. So Colleen Pallison, thank you for joining us this evening. Sarah Yusuf, yes, long time no see. Wonderful to see you down there this evening. And Super Sensible, wonderful to see you as well. So again, a lot of my research lately has been in ancient Egypt and really other areas of the world. Again, we are going to Turkey coming up here in just 8 months, well, 8.5 months. So information on that's going to be coming out very, very soon, because we have really only a short period of time to get people together and head out there. And Germany tours directly after that. But with all this research that we've been doing in Egypt, of course, we see the ancient Egyptians making these sorts of connections to other dimensions, other places within the cosmos. And they do this from the idea of consciousness, because to them, we call it the afterlife, but really it's all the same journey. Just you end up losing the body and you continue on as your consciousness to these other places in the universe. So you have a lot of the ancient Egyptian text telling you that the soul, the consciousness, goes on to the constellation of Orion. There's a whole process with that. The halls of Amenti, Anubis is involved. You meet Mot, and then you take that journey. So this was really just another part of life for them. And when we talk about stargates or other gates, they had doorways, like we call them false doorways, but ancient Egyptians really believed that these were doorways built into the walls that their consciousness could go through to go to these other worlds. And we talked a bit about this. Well, I know I played the clip last week. We're playing it again just because it's pertinent. I just posted it to social media here, like on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and all that. But going to go ahead and play this, and to see that Brandon is down in the house. The Cosmic Contact Conference, which was really, really good. Yeah, that's great. You did a Hollywood tour a couple months ago when you were in LA for Billy Carson's event. That's wonderful. Yeah, we're doing that for Kate's birthday. But yeah, I want to go ahead and play this clip of the 7 gates, and we'll discuss this a little bit further, because I revealed something just the other day in my most recent blog article talking about the 7 gates here. So, and I did provide a link for that down in the description as well.
So, why gates were very important for the ancient Egyptian times? Because maybe they were able to go through. Okay, that's why they represented them everywhere. Okay? But of course, it's not just the gates. There's something behind the gates.
So if we're talking stargates and we're talking other dimensions, so one theory that I've been playing around with this is, okay, we talked earlier, some of you may have overheard me talking about our science, trying to mesh science into this, has shown that we have up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 10. Now, some believe that there are even more than that, but we'll go with the convention 0 through 10. And that goes from all the 0 being a point, which is controversial within scientific circles, a line, a plane, flat surface, and then a 3-dimensional object, and then our consciousness is the 4th dimension, which is time, and they have all these other dimensions above that. Well, if we're able to traverse a stargate into other dimensions, is this representing those dimensions, ours and beyond, that we can travel to? So maybe the first gate is, that 4th dimension of time, us traversing to somewhere else, whether it's on this planet, elsewhere in the cosmos. And then the next gate, the 5th dimension, the next gate after that, the 6th dimension, the next gate, the 7th, entering those areas, lands, visiting the beings beyond, all the way up to the 10th dimension, which would be the 7th gate. So theory I'm playing with, and you guys can ruminate over that as you wish.
So here's Kate and I at the 7 gates. It's really, really an interesting area. It's at Karnak is where it's at. All the way in the back. It's in the eastern corner, just before you actually exit the back of the temple complex. And it's interesting because I'm saying, yeah, this is a theory I'm playing. I have been playing around with it for 3 minutes. So what I revealed in my blog article is how this came to me, which was really, really interesting, because what happened was we've been spending the day at Karnak. We come in, we don't go straight up the gut because it's just so overpopulated with tourists. So we go to the open air museum, which has a lot of interesting things going on. So we spent some time at the Red Shrine, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And I didn't upload the photo, did I? I didn't. Oops. That's all right. So we spent some time at the Red Shrine. We then, Kate and I were trying to get some photos and things like this, because this is an important piece for us, the Red Shrine. And I didn't upload any of those photos. Nice job, Michael. And then the others went over to the Alabaster Shrines. And then there's the Stargate of Cineraset III, which I've shown you guys that clip a million times with Muhammad. So when we go up to Sekhmet, we visit her. And it was after we were visiting her, we were in a conversation. So we're headed eastward, really kind of like the way that the temple is positioned, the path, I think I said in the article, on the north side. Well, yeah, it's kind of the northeast side, but you're kind of walking at an angle toward the east. And we're walking along that, talking about how, so we got some photos, tip the guy, and we may have gotten some photos standing next to Sekhmet. You're not supposed to. They have a barrier there. And you're just supposed to stand behind that and take photos of her. Well, you know, it was really nice. So we wanted to make sure people in the group didn't post any of those photos publicly, because that can get the guy in trouble and fired. So we're discussing this sort of thing as we're walking toward the Chapel of the Seven Gates, and all of a sudden, just it popped in my head exactly what I described in that video clip. And it made no thinking about anything remotely close to that. And then as Kate and I continued walking and talking about Sekhmet, I'm like kind of quietly figuring out the numbers, and yeah, that lines up. That actually makes sense. So I presented that. So I had somebody so Brandon is down there in the chat. At Cosmic Contact Conference, I had a young gentleman come to my table, and we were talking for a little while. And one of the questions he asked me was, how do you know when you've gotten a download, or it's just something your mind randomly comes up with? And I used that as an example, because it was, I'm a writer, and yeah, things come to me, but a lot of times the things that come to me are things that I've been talking about and thinking about for a while, and my brain is piecing things together. As well as, when I'm out at a site and I see something, it's like, oh, that reminds me of this other place that I visited, and I start drawing those connections like that. This was just out of the blue, out of nowhere, had absolutely nothing to do with what we were talking about or doing, except for the fact that we were going there, but I wasn't thinking about where we were going. We were just walking and talking about Sekhmet. So it was a really, really fascinating moment. But that, to me, makes what I was talking about there at the Seven Gates much more pertinent, that there's certainly something much more relevant to our science, what science has said about dimensions. And scientists do argue about how many dimensions we really have. The general convention is 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 11. I'll go ahead and toss up the dimensional primer as we do here from time to time. So these are the ones that are in our sphere of influence. Our consciousness is in the fourth dimension. That's where we reside. The fourth dimension we call time. We have access to everything below that. So first dimension this is the controversial one, is a dot, a single point. That's a 0 dimension. Then first dimension is a line. Second dimension is a plane or a flat surface. Third dimension is any 3D object represented here by the cube. And we have access to all of that. Well, if there were up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 10, that means all of those other dimensions, 5, 6, 7, 8, they have access to all the dimensions below theirs. It's fascinating. Cover this a lot in my book, Travels Through Time. And this is how beings from other dimensions are able to access us, in us not really understanding how they do it. I mean, for one, they have different geometry. But secondly, they also have access to all time. The movie Interstellar did a wonderful job of depicting this. It's hard for us to depict it as humans, because when we've tried to do this sort of thing, Like the whole idea of the Tesseract, and I don't mean the Marvel Magic Cube that opens a portal. The idea of a Tesseract is a representation of another dimension on top of a three-dimensional cube. So basically, it's really heavy-handed, puts like more cube structure on top of a cube. It's really just additional 3D representation. So it's not really what it is. But I thought Interstellar did a really, really good job of trying to represent, if you are outside of time, they called it a Tesseract in there. They did it all as like cubes, made the daughter's room a cube. And Cooper had access to every single moment of his daughter's bedroom. He had to deliver a message. They didn't know when was a good point in time to deliver this message, since they were outside of time. But he, having a relationship with his daughter, knew where in time to deliver that message. So he was able to pick that point, but he had access to every single moment of his daughter's bedroom. So that means we need to look at what could possibly be in those other dimensions. And I'm really kind of upset with myself that I didn't upload the Red Shrine Stargate photos. Oh my gosh. So the Red Shrine, if you guys have seen my blog that I posted, I think, was it yesterday or was it the day before? I think it was yesterday. That blog article where I'm talking about let's call it Red Shrine Stargate and the 7 Gates download. I have it, like I said, I have it linked there in the description, and you can see the photos there. I'm just, very busy today, and I guess I didn't upload those. Actually, wait a second. I do have one of them right here. So the actual photo of the Red Shrine, but the interior ones, I don't. So this shrine was built by Hatshepsut, who is one of our Stargate kings. Yes, Hatshepsut was a female, but she used the title king. She didn't want to be called queen. She co-ruled for a time with Thutmose III, and then when she passed, Thutmose III continued on. And over across the Nile River, directly across from Karnak, is Hatshepsut's mortuary temple. And the Holy of Holies there at Karnak is on a straight line with the Holy of Holies at Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, both marked as Stargates. And then Hatshepsut's temple has a big, long staircase that comes down perfectly on a line with Karnak and is miles away. It's miles away. I know when I describe it, it seems like, oh yeah, they're just on other sides in the Nile River, and it's a few miles away, but perfectly on a line. And this Red Shrine was something that was along that primary axis of Karnak Temple back in the day. It, in antiquity, was dismantled. A lot of the blocks used that filler kind of scattered about throughout the Karnak complex. Some people say Thutmose III did that. We're not completely positive, but a lot of people attribute that to him. But what's fascinating about this shrine is that, well, one, the exterior along the sides, you do find the symbol for Stargate, our traditional Saba Stargate symbolism, which we find in Abydos, found in Hatshepsut's temple, Dendera, Edfu. We find it all over the place. So this is labeled as a Stargate. In the interior, the very, very middle, is what housed Bark, which was basically it was a representation of a boat, but the hall was the Bark Hall that it was within, which is the transportation for the gods. Again, we see this up at Hatshepsut's mortuary temple. You find symbolism for Star House inside. You also find symbolism for Seshat, which was a goddess, and she was a cosmic architect. So you find all of these incredible connections back to the stars and the cosmos and moving about. Again, with a Stargate, yeah, you could move to other places in the cosmos. You can move to other places on the planet. You could go to other dimensions, other points in time, all of these things. And people ask me, well, were you physically going? Because like at Abydos, we see in the Hall of Ptah Soker on the walls in there, the depiction of ingesting monatomic white gold cakes before you enter into the chambers. So, to prepare the body before you go inside the chamber. So was it a real physical travel that you did? Or was this something that was, you could say, spiritually based or more consciously based? People talk about entering into ultra states of consciousness going into these chambers. And so if you're entering into an ultra state of consciousness, does that mean your consciousness is leaving your body? And that is what is traveling. People today, they astral project. They go places when they astral project. And it doesn't necessarily have to be here. A lot of people do, but people who astral project talk about going to the moon, going to Mars, going to other places within the solar system or even outside of the solar system. We've postulated on here before extraterrestrials visiting. Doesn't necessarily have to be physically in a craft. It could be interdimensional in nature, crossing dimensions. It could be a projection of consciousness across the cosmos as well. So I wanted to share something that was really, really fascinating the other week. So Kate has been getting settled in here in Ohio, and she's starting to do some sessions and these sort of things as a QHHT practitioner. So doing QHHT, past life regressions, these sorts of things. So she really hadn't done a session since September because of the move and the travel and everything that we've been doing in the holidays. So she wanted to get in a little bit of practice. So, okay, we're gonna do a session with me. And this turned out to be a Stargate session. It was really, really fascinating. And so we went back to one of my past lives. And when I showed up, I was in this large stone structure. And I was young, early to mid 20s. And basically, I was an acolyte within this temple. So I was learning to be a priest at this temple. And essentially it was Egypt, but before Egypt. Structurally, it was very, very familiar with the pillars and the way the doorways were done and the gateways and all of that, but no hieroglyphs. There was some design work, but no hieroglyphs. So I was there waiting for my friend, my buddy. He didn't show up. And what we were supposed to do, and I ended up going to do in this lifetime, was to sneak into the Stargate chamber. They were holding a ceremony, and because we were younger and we were like in the program learning, we hadn't been made privy to what was going on there, but we knew how we could sneak up into the chamber and watch. And so basically it was this niche that was at the top of the chamber, and I'm looking down onto everything that's going on. And there were 12 of the priests that were in there, including the high priest, who was basically in the center, and the other 11 were around him. And they're doing some chanting, really like setting a vibration, like you could like feel this. And it activated this doorway inside this other chamber that was built in. It was basically like a chamber inside of this larger chamber. So smaller chamber inside the bigger one. And it activated this. And there was this light beam that was starting to come through. And it was basically kind of there in the doorway. It couldn't come any further than that. And it was absolutely fascinating that this was the Stargate being used. It was, I have this picture here, and I've used this picture for light beams before. It wasn't really so much like this. It was, very, very energetic in nature. Was very tall because the doorway itself was probably like 20 feet tall, and this thing was standing tall within it. It was probably 10 to 15 feet tall. And it was just, all full of like, white energy, almost electric. So there's like maybe some blue and, things like this within it, which was really, really fascinating. So we ended up fast forwarding to other moments of my life and seeing what was going on. I ended up becoming the high priest. And what was happening was the connection was losing its power. So back in the day, like back before that, these beings used to come out right through those doorways and would walk amongst us, and vice versa. We could go there. So there was a distinct connection between. And it was really that light being was the consciousness of the being on the other side. And this connection was to Orion. And over time, losing that connection more and more and more and more. By the time I became the high priest and I was an old man, it was pretty much gone. We still would make attempts, one side attempting with the other, and it couldn't keep up. And eventually when I passed, what we did was essentially that same ceremony. Me as the high priest in the middle, I'm basically lying on a bed. And as I passed, it worked in a sense that, went through the gate and came out on the other side for like a fleeting moment to see their world before my consciousness was returned to the universe or returned to source or the home world or whatever you want to call it. So it was really, really fascinating. So seeing that gives me a much, much bigger idea that, we weren't necessarily using stargates to travel there in our human form, but it was our consciousness, our inner light form that was making this trip, whether it was to another place in the cosmos or another place on Earth or another dimension, these sorts of things. And we talked about it. Well, actually, it was an after show the other week, and I posted an article on this, that there has actually been studies that show that living beings, and not just humans, animals, plants, do emanate a light field, which is really, really interesting. So see if I have that right here. We emit a visible light that vanishes when we die, surprising study says. So I just posted that one a couple of weeks ago, but we talked about that in the after show the other week as well. So I have a link. If you want to learn more about Kate and what she does, I have her link down there in the description. So it's CatherineSwinQHHT.com. So definitely go check that out when you have a chance. So I know there are a lot of comments down in the chat, so I want to take a few of those here real quick. So let me move up here. And yeah, there's Kate right there, cosmic hypnotist. Absolutely. And so Sarah's asking, what is the aspect of these gates that connects to other dimensions? Is it quantum entanglement? So that's a good question, and I believe probably yes. So when I wrote my book, Travels Through Time, and I was doing a lot of the time travel work, and we still talk about that because it's all part of the connected universe. When we talk about that, I have an uncle who's a nuclear physicist, read the book. He's a retired nuclear physicist now. He's almost 80. And he read it. He's like, yeah, I totally understand your stacked time theory. I agree with it. I agree really with everything that's in your book, but I have a question that, is bothering me. I'm like, oh, okay, what's that? And he said, if our universe is expanding, where we are physically in the universe today is not the same place where we were, say, 20 years ago or whatever. So if everything is stacked and connected and all that, how do you account for the fact that we are physically in a different spot within the universe? And so I thought about that for a moment, and I was like, that's a really good question, Uncle Bill. Killed a couple seconds there with that, and it just popped right in there. And I was like, entanglement. He's like, oh yeah, that'll work. Done. So yeah, there's something set up, and we're talking about the gates, and we're talking about these different connections that these things are quantumly entangled. I believe that has a lot to do with it. So Jose says, so I've heard that God resides in the 10th dimension. If other beings exist in up to 11, could it be theoretically safe to say that they're also aware of his presence? So up to 11, but 0 through 10. So 10 is the highest dimension that, at least right now, our theoretical physics says is possible. Although you have other scientists and other physicists that are saying, well, there are likely more than that, and there very well may be. But right now, it's 0 through 10. Here's the thing with that, is that when we look at the universe is a physical thing. And even our theoretical physicists are saying that there are other universes beyond ours. And they almost call them like bubble universes. So, each one kind of like, you have to keep scaling up. We have our planet, which is part of a solar system. That solar system is part of a galaxy. That galaxy is part of the universe. The universe is part of something else, something further, something beyond, which we don't know. So each of these universes has their own physical properties and these sorts of things. Different chemical makeups, nuclear reactions, all of that. So Michio Kaku's book, Parallel Worlds, does a really, really good job of covering this sort of thing. So all of those dimensions would be within these universes. So if we're talking, whether you call it God or whether you call it source or higher power, whatever you want to call it, would be beyond that. Last week we were talking about simulations, something that's outside, but we do have connections to that. All right, see what else we have. I'll take another one here and then we have to move on. So, this one. So, Brandon, those upper D things can appear as they are upper dimensions, but I think our conscious mind has to translate the signal into a graspable thing or go insane, like appearing as wheels within wheels or beings within multi-faces, or I don't know, a flying spaghetti monster. Yeah, that's flying spaghetti monster. There you go. Well, and that's the thing, is we don't have as human beings the physical geometry to really see and understand those dimensions. We have ideas and we have concepts, but I've used the example before of flatland. So 2-dimensional surface, and everything within flatland is like a circle or a square, or triangle, like just plain flat surface. They don't have an idea of a cube or a sphere or anything like that. And if you were to drop one of those 3-dimensional objects into this 2-dimensional world, all they would see was, like, if you dropped a sphere into it, is at first it would start as like a little circle. As you continue to drop it in, get wider and wider and wider until it became the largest circle it could possibly be, full circumference. And then it would, as it continued to drop through, would get small and small and small again to a very tiny circle and a dot, and then gone. But that's all they would see. They wouldn't actually see the full sphere. They would just see various circles opening and then closing. Same thing with us. As these other beings and things come into our world that are from these higher dimensions, we get glimpses that that we can only kind of vaguely comprehend. So some of these beings that we're seeing, we're not seeing them in their full form. We're only seeing a very, very narrow aspect that our human minds and our physiology can comprehend. So, when we were talking about, I did a lot of work on this with shadow people. The ones that are coming from other dimensions, we're not seeing their full form because they are of a higher dimension. And so we're just grasping a part of the full form, which might happen to be a bipedal person or seemingly to us. So, okay. On that note, talking shadow people and other beings, I think something that escapes us sometimes as we talk about these other beings in interdimensional beings, extraterrestrials, things that come from other places into our world. There's been a lot of talk lately here about Sasquatch and things like this being possibly interdimensional in nature, which we are going to get a little into that here, which is fascinating and wonderful. But I think we forget that they also have their own consciousness as well. I think a lot of times humans kind of compartmentalize themselves into, we're humans, we're the ones that have the consciousness. Well, so do these other beings that come into our plane of existence as well. I think we tend to forget that. So I wanted to play this clip here. We're going to play a longer version of it during the after show, but this was featured on Gaia. It's also featured in Portals to the Stars. And basically, it's a session that Kate had. Neither one of these women, Kate nor Ellis, who was the participant, neither one of them are like into Sasquatch or Bigfoot or anything like that. This just happened to come out in this session. So I'm going to play this clip. Like I said, we're going to play the longer clip during the after show, and that'll be for the portal members.
I'm not going down as such. It keeps me in this kind of a weird, like a funnel thing.
Tell me about this funnel.
It's kind of purpley pink, more like energy. I feel like above it, or I'm looking down and it goes sort of thinner down, and I can't perceive anything around this funnel, big tunnely thing.
And is it still or is it moving?
It's kind of turning and spinning and...
So how does it feel when you jumped off?
Oh, it feels really fast, like in between space and time, in this like voidy place. Everything just becomes one. I kind of can't perceive it. It's just seeing it as a physical body now, to some other world or somewhere.
And how would you describe your face?
Half humanish, half animalish, furry eyes, the mouth is a bit more like human, nose is a bit more like animalish or a bit different.
And what are your eyes like?
Brown, quite... Yes, even the face is a bit furry. I think it's almost like a little missions or exploration stuff we can do.
And how can you get up to it?
It's this kind of, whatever that was, dimensionally portally thing. It's not like that we physically just get out. I think it's the intention. We can go anywhere.
So you have to set the intention.
Yeah.
And you can also catch a lot of that session on Kate's YouTube channels. That's Portal to the Cosmos. You can get that there as well. So, but it was a really, really fascinating session. And like I said, a transcript of part of it in Portals to the Stars, that you had the Sasquatch using a portal to move from its dimension into ours. And its dimension was like an inner earth. It was really, really cool, really, really fascinating. When they were in the inner earth, they were using things like crystals to store the information of the universe, which is just absolutely incredible, because we are starting to do that as humanity, where we can write data into quartz crystals, and it's like terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of, it might even be exabytes worth of data that you can store into these quartz crystals like this. So things that we are starting to do now as humans. So I saw, Brandon, he says, yeah, like Mike explained, I found the book, and this is the book, Flatland, A Romance of Many Dimensions, 1884 by Edwin A. Abbott, to help me understand from where we are dimensionally, at least. So yeah, definitely. So check that out. A Romance of Many Dimensions, 1884 by Edwin A. Abbott. They also, so this is the Secret Library of the Connected Universe. So let me grab something from down here. There we go. So this is a first edition copy here. Man in Time, J.B. Priestley. So he explains more in depth about the fourth dimension of time that we are within. And a lot of, so Richard Matheson, who wrote Somewhere in Time, or originally it was Bid Time Return, and it became Somewhere in Time with the film. He actually, one of the chapters of that book is really almost like a book review of Man in Time, but that gets into more specifically the fourth dimension. Abbott's book is kind of more helping someone like us to understand how dimensions work. Even The Time Machine by H.G. Wells gets into the fourth dimension a little bit, like toward the very beginning. But because that's one of the problems, is trying to get your brain around how the different dimensions work. So like Chanel here, so we can live inside the second dimension. My brain is not working properly tonight, too much information, I think. So it's not that we would live inside the second dimension, it's that we have access to the second dimension because we are above that. So our consciousness is in the fourth dimension, which we call time. So we have access to all the dimensions below that. So, three-dimensional object here, like this bottle. Well, this bottle is made of, as a three-dimensional object, it's made of the second, first, and the controversial zero dimension. So, so we have access to it. We're not living within it. We are living around it, for lack of a better term there. So, back to our Sasquatch here, though. The fantastic idea that they are using these stargates, portals, to move between dimensions from their world to ours is incredible, because this is something that, like we were talking to ancient Egyptians before, were using for themselves to move in and about dimensions. But then you also had these other beings that were coming through as well. And it all goes back to consciousness. There was sound technology that was involved with this, setting the correct frequency, the correct vibration, which is absolutely incredible. And so we have places all over the world where we can access this. People always want to know, okay, how can I do it? How can I get to it? How can I make a Stargate activation? Here, how can I send my consciousness to, some other dimension or whatever? Going to a powerful place, Egypt for one, certainly helps. You have many places like that, and this is why you had the ancients building things like stone circles to be able to harness that energy, to use it for different purposes like this. So going to those power places, but you don't have to. There's energy all over the earth. It all goes back to the core of the earth, the magnetism that is emanating forth from there, which affects the entire planet and even outside the planet. Those power places have more going on because there's really something buried within the ground. As that electromagnetism rises through the earth, through the mantle and the crust, it interacts with different metals and minerals, creating different localized electromagnetic fields. And some of those are very strong and can help you to do these sorts of things. So that's why some of these things were built at those locations. So yeah, I think we're getting closer and closer to really rediscovering what the ancients knew about moving between different dimensions and different worlds with the consciousness. We've talked before about uses of a Stargate. It could even just be communication, and that's kind of really what was happening there at the end of that particular session. Was the only thing that they could really do through the Stargate anymore was communicate, because they couldn't fully come out of it at all. So another one that I wanted to throw out there, and I'll just do the shorter version of this. I have 2 different clips of this. So it's really a sneak peek of Shadow Dimension Beyond the Shadows, which I know I've been promising forever that the thing is going to come out. I'll go ahead with there's a 2-minute version and a 4.5-minute version. We're getting down toward the end of the show. So I'll go with the 2-minute version, and we'll discuss, but this has to do with another type of being that was coming forth.
We decided to take a break and just hang out by the fire that we had going behind the house. There's a nice big bonfire area. And so we're just talking and stoking the fire, and all of a sudden, down out of the woods, filtered these little blue lights.
I remember just looking over, and it really took me a moment to process it. And there was this, little blue ball of light that was hovering about maybe a foot and a half off the ground. And it just stayed there. Like I'm staring at it, and I think I grabbed your leg because I couldn't even talk. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I need somebody else to see this.
Somewhere in the air, those were kind of twinkling a little bit, little blue twinkles. But then there were some that were down on the ground that would slowly morph into a bright blue light and then dissipate away, and then morph back into a light and dissipate away.
I don't know if the night vision's actually picking up on these glows.
I know we might seem really big to you, but we're not here to harm you.
Yeah, and we're trying to be careful.
Oh, right there.
I see it.
Hi.
Hi.
There's 2. They were different in that some of them were just a constant bright blue light, and I mean like a bright blue light, like something you would see on the end of like an e-cigarette or something. It was like that bright fluorescent electric blue light. And I remember getting up close to them, as close as I thought I could on the ground. I mean, it felt like we were about like that far away because you could see them. So the fact that they were kind of dimming in and out sometimes, some of them stayed really strong, some of them flickered and then were gone. But I've never seen anything else.
Yeah, so with that one, and the part that I cut from the beginning of that was part of the longer version, was preceding that back in the woods, and we couldn't go too far into there because it became somebody else's property, and she doesn't like all the action going on down at the Hinsdale house, which is where this was at. And so we couldn't go back there, but it was this giant ball of light that was bouncing around back there, like a blue ball of light. And we couldn't go back there. It wasn't coming closer to us. It was just bouncing around back there. So we eventually had to kind of call that off and go back into the house. And then, yeah, we ended up out there by the fire. That's where all the little blue lights came down. So early on, not long after this happened, I'm trying to think about, what in the world did we just witness? I kept thinking, well, maybe all these little balls of light, these little, twinkles and other things were once a part of the big ball, and the big ball like dispersed and it became all these little ones. But over time, as I've researched more and put more ideas and theories together, I've talked about the glowing balls of light and what we call the orbs and these sorts of things in many cases are actually the portals themselves. Whether, because people talk about seeing giant balls of light with UFO activity, UFOs are going in and out, or when we had the drone flap with Sasquatch, people talk about seeing balls of light and these sorts of things. Are those, again, Interstellar did a fantastic job of this when they were talking about the spherical hole rather than just a big circle. Like we've been using this Sasquatch photo here, you see the circle behind there, but that's not really what it would look like. It would be a giant sphere, because that's what a circle is in 3D space. Again, you have to kind of keep dimensions in mind here. And so was that giant ball of light that was bouncing around, was that actually the portal from whence these little beings, you can call them fairies, whatever you want to call them, is that what they came through? And of course, then you ask the question, where did they come from? Did they come from somewhere else across the cosmos? Were they coming from another dimension? And, you got a little bit of a glimpse there. We were trying to be very nice, very cordial in speaking to them, to basically try to convey the message that, hey, we're friendly. We're just curious as to who you are. We want to get to know you a little bit. Again, all of these beings also have a consciousness as well. So we try to treat them kindly, just like any other living being or life form. So one of the last things I kind of wanted to throw out here, just to get your mind thinking a little bit, is we're talking other dimensions, universes, things like that. And we're talking about having to build structures, whether stone circles or temples or pyramids, whatever, to harness energy, to do these different things of opening stargates and portals and things like this. Are there things on this planet? We were talking about also things within the Earth. Are there things on this planet that are left over from previous universe? And what I mean by that is, again, if we go back to the photo we were looking at before with all these universes, just like with anything else, it's born, it lives, it thrives for a while, it grows, it expands, and eventually it dies. We know that our universe is not eternal, but what's going to come after the universe? Well, another one of these universes. And we do know, or at least many theoretical physicists believe, that our solar system was born out of another, that our current sun doesn't have enough really like power to have created all of this around us, that it needed a lift, it needed a boost early on. It would have gotten that from a previous solar system that we would have been in, going supernova. So, all right, solar system. So that means that our solar system was born out of another, meaning everything that makes up this planet, all the rocks, the mountains, the water, the moon that's around us, was part of some other planetary system billions of years ago and then formed up into this. So this is not our planet's first go around. It just didn't originally look like this. It was different. Well, same thing with the universe. At some point, it's going to die off, but then it's going to reform into another universe, which is, of course, our symbolism of the Ouroboros, the constant recycling and renewal. That's why I always talk about, I believe that the point where the tail is being eaten by the head is symbolic of the Big Bang. The beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. So yeah, the end of one universe is the beginning of another. But what if some of these things that we have here, because it really is all left over from, for us, the previous solar system, well, that would have been from the previous universe. What if there are like whole solid objects that are left over from previous incarnations of the universe. And maybe there are beings that are privy to this information, and there's a draw, there's an attraction, maybe there's something special about whatever the objects may be. And maybe that's why you have locations that are, not only so revered by us as humans, but that seemingly get visited a lot by different beings, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Mount Shasta, or some of these other locations. So kind of some food for thought there on that one. So we are going to have to wind down here. Of course, we have the after show coming up, and I am going to play that more longer extended clip. Yeah, I might show both longer extended clips there of the Sasquatch session, and then the longer clip of the if you want to call them fairies at Hinsdale House, the little beings, the little light beings there at Hinsdale House. So let's take another question or two. So Chanel, are we able to open a portal ourselves? Can we say meditate one? Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely believe that you can do that. It's really comes down to setting that frequency. So absolutely. So I think the same thing for time travel and all that as well. That and I say this in Travels Through Time, that time travel has much, much more to do with consciousness than it has to do with a flux capacitor and a DeLorean. So, all right. Let's see. Okay, any locations in central / northern Ohio? Well, yeah, I mean, you can really do this anywhere. You had a lot of sacred lands here in Ohio, especially more to the southern part of the state, like we talked about Serpent Mound, Columbus area, Newark, Ohio. You have the Great Circle Earthworks, and Kate and I definitely had some moments there on what they call Eagle Mound. And there was when we were there was almost nobody there. There was like maybe 2 other people that were walking around, and that was it. And so it was really pretty amazing. I've been there. It was the 3rd time that I've been there, but it was the 1st time for Kate, and it was really pretty amazing. So yeah, definitely check it out. And I say more to the central to southern part than the northern, because the glacier. This used to be all covered by a glacier, and the glacier had to recede. And so like where I'm sitting right now, thousands of years ago was covered by a mile or 2 of ice. So so there we go. All right, we're going to leave it off at that. Again, those are listening to the podcast version of this later, I invite you to join us every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time, connecteduniverseportal.com. Again, we do have memberships out here now on YouTube, youtube.com/@MikeRicksecker. Invite you to support at Patreon as well, or sign up for the portal, either one. And then have all kinds of links down there in the description for the blog article I was talking about, Kate's website, which is catherineswinqhht.com. The Gaia episode that I was talking about, where the Sasquatch bit was featured, there's a link for that in there as well. So all kinds of stuff down in there. So all right, everybody, until next time, time really exists.